and her treacherous sister Judah saw it. That was talking about Israel. And so now he's laying the case against Judah because he compares Israel to them, and then he says, Judah saw what Israel did and how God treated them, and they didn't turn. They did worse. And so he's making the case so strongly. But look at how God is so gracious. Look at verse 13, chapter 3. Only acknowledge thine iniquity, that thou hast transgressed against the Lord thy God, and hast scattered thy ways to the strangers under every green tree, and you have not obeyed my voice, saith the Lord. You see? So he tells them, if you turn, then I will feed you. I'll give you pastors, and they'll feed you with knowledge and understanding. And that's the book of Jeremiah. And it goes on until the nation of Judah, the remnant of the entire nation, is taken away by Babylon. But now look at Lamentations, because this is really the cry that comes out in response to what has happened to this nation and this city when it actually came upon them. Now, historically, again, the situation is that the Babylonians are coming in. Judah and Jerusalem are there. They come to Jerusalem. They besiege the city. They kill. They take away prisoners. They destroy. It's just terrible. Women actually eat their own children. At this time, the young men and the unmarried girls are destroyed. The babies, like I say, are killed. The prophets are even destroyed, and the teachers are destroyed in the city. And you think, what is happening? How could this happen? And God says, in reading the whole book of Jeremiah, you see, it's because of your iniquity. And so look in Jeremiah chapter 1, Lamentations of Jeremiah chapter 1, and look at verse 12. And when you read this, you just hear the mournful cry coming up from this city that's being destroyed. Now you think about this. You know, we think it's bad when the economy turns down a couple clicks and, you know, suddenly you're worried about your job, maybe you've lost your job and you can't pay your bills, and certainly that is a grief of mind. But here, think about it. It's not a matter of losing a little bit. It's a matter of being yourself and all of your children and everything you hold dear being put to death and destroyed and taken prisoner. You see this. And so he says in verse 12, is it nothing to you? And the words here are spoken by God, the Holy Spirit, through Jeremiah the prophet on behalf of the people of Jerusalem. You see, he's speaking from their perspective through the prophet. And he says, is it nothing to you, all you that pass by? Behold, and see if there be any sorrow like unto my sorrow, which is done to me, wherewith the Lord hath afflicted me in the day of his fierce anger. From above hath he sent fire into my bones, and it prevaileth against them. You know, the language here you can see is that my bones are like a fortress, and God has sent fire into them, and all of my inner strength is being taken away by the assault of God himself at the very core of who I am, my bones. He says, he hath spread a net for my feet. He hath turned me back. He hath made me desolate. In other words, when I was approaching, he pushed me back. He made me desolate and faint all the day. The yoke of my transgressions is bound by his hand. They are wreathed and come up upon my neck. He hath made my strength to fall. So it's like he's saying, God has taken my transgressions and he's bound them together like a cord or rope, and he's wrapped them around my neck. It's a yoke on me. He has made my strength to fall. The Lord hath delivered me into their hands, from whom I am not able to rise up. He's speaking historically about the Babylonians. God has taken the city of Jerusalem, and he's given them over to the Babylonians, and the people in this cry, the cry goes up from Jeremiah on their behalf, and he says in verse 15, the Lord hath trodden underfoot all my mighty men in the midst of me. He's saying, there were mighty men in Jerusalem, they've all been trampled down. He hath called an assembly against me to crush my young men. The Lord hath trodden the virgin, the daughter of Judah, as in a winepress. For these things I weep. Mine eye runneth down with water, because the Comforter that should relieve my soul is far from me. My children are desolate, because the enemy prevailed. Zion spreadeth forth her hands, and there is none to comfort her. The Lord hath commanded concerning Jacob that his adversaries should be round about him. Jerusalem is as a menstruous woman among them. The Lord is righteous, for I have rebelled against his commandment. Let's pause there. You see what he said there? He said that the one who should comfort him, who should relieve him, is far away from him, and the enemy has prevailed. And then he says that the Lord commanded concerning Jacob that his adversaries should come around about him. You see that? And why? Why were the adversaries sent against Jerusalem? Well, he even admits it in this prayer. He says, verse 18, the Lord is righteous, for I have rebelled against his commandment. Hear, I pray you, all people, and behold my sorrow. My virgins and my young men are gone into captivity. I called for my lovers, but they have deceived me. My priests and mine elders gave up the ghost in the city, while they sought their meat to relieve their souls. In other words, the priests and the elders who should have been feeding the people, they died while they were seeking their own food. And then he says in verse 20, behold, O Lord, for I am in distress. My bowels are troubled. Mine heart is turned within me, for I have grievously rebelled. Abroad the sword bereaveth. At home there is death. So what he's saying is that the people who have been taken far away, it causes death there, and at home it's causing death here. So you see all of this, verse 21, they have heard that I sigh, there is none to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my trouble. They are glad that thou hast done it. You see, not only is God against them, and he's against them and bringing punishment, but he's bringing it from the ones who are their enemies. And then the enemies who come against them, they look upon them, and what did he say there at the last? He said, all my enemies have heard of my trouble, and they're glad that God has done it. So all the ones who were his enemies heard that God had brought the Babylonians against them, and they were glad. It's good. It's kind of like in, today, it's like if maybe Iran attacked Israel. I don't care. I'm not saying that Israel are the people of God today, but if Iran attacked Israel, then maybe the Saudi Arabians would be glad about it. Oh, look, good, go. That's what it was. Only here, the picture is, historically, it's Jerusalem being destroyed by the Babylonians, and the people all around saying, good for them. They're getting what I want them to have. And so that just adds to the burden. All of my children, the young strong men have been taken captive. The young women who have not yet been married, they've been taken away captive and destroyed. All the priests have been destroyed. The prophets in the city have been destroyed. What do we do? Why is God doing this? And then he admits it's because God has rewarded me for my rebellion. So you see in this the truth that God brings as a recompense for iniquity. He brings not just some sort of an abstract punishment, but he actually brings the enemies. And why did he bring their enemies? Well, because they actually looked to the gods. They looked upon their enemies, and they saw the way they lived, and they thought, that's exactly what I want. I like the way things are going for them, and so they began to look to their gods and trust in their gods and worship their gods and want what they had, and God said, the very thing that you trusted in, the very thing you sought after is going to be your destruction, because you didn't seek the Lord, didn't trust in him, didn't delight in him. And so God brought their enemies against them because of their iniquity, because they served these other gods that couldn't help them. So he said in that verse 19, I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. So, but what do we learn from this? Well, historically, Jerusalem